Wow, thank you for that. I hope that I can deliver all of that and give you all everything that you need in this time that we have together. So I'm going to introduce myself as well, just to give you a little bit more background on what I'm bringing to the table. But I also want to kind of set your expectations on this as well. So if you're coming into here looking for exact tips on how to answer a question and what to say and not to say in an interview, I am going to give you some of that. But I also want to challenge you all that this interview is not just about, or your interviews are not just about how you answer your questions or answering it the right way. I want you to go into interviews knowing that it's not just about the person on the other side liking you. Yes, you want them to like you so that they can hire you, but this is about you making sure that you like them as well, and that this is an organization that you want to work for. So it's not just, I hope they like me. It's, do I see myself growing in this? Do I see that this is going to be a company that's going to invest in me, or an opportunity that's going to help me to grow and get to whatever my next level, or help me set goals beyond what I may be thinking today? This is about you liking them too. So I want you all to keep that in mind when you're going through interviews. And the other thing is, you don't want to go into interviews being robotic. Let them see who you are. You all have something unique. That's the one theme that I've taken away from what Dr. Christie has put together. Even when you're looking for scholarships, you're looking for things that uniquely represents your unique self and who you are. And you want to be authentic in everything that you're doing. And who you are today may not be who you are going to be in 5 years and 10 years. But what is that you're needing? And I want you to come and bring that to your interviews as well. So let me introduce myself. I am Quanteer Williams, and I am in a place that I kind of call a transition. So I've spent decades in my entire career in the technology industry. I've been in sales, I've been in global operations, I've managed people at Microsoft, as well as Amazon Web Services, as well as smaller startup companies. I've followed customers through their journey, so maybe customer support, and I started off as a software engineer. I'm a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina, computer science. And then from there, I went on to get my MBA and master's at University of Maryland Global College. So I've done a number of different things throughout my career, but I'm most passionate about helping young professionals, students, young people, even seasoned people. I do global mentorship. I have a young lady that I mentor in Nairobi in Kenya, who I've been with since she was 15 years old. So, and now she's going to school for her master's and thinking about doing a fellowship in the UK. So I've done a number of things, but that's because I want to make sure that people get the investment that I had to go and find. You know, I came from a single parent household, and I didn't always have someone there to teach me and show me how to ask questions, how to present my way. But I had a great foundation in a family. I was always curious about a lot of things. And so that's what I kind of brought to the table that helped navigate my career. I am most proud, and my most proud and accomplished role is that of a mother. I have three amazing children, Brandon, TJ, and Fallon. And this is where I devote my time to making sure that they're getting the things that they need. So everything I've done in my career has been, you know, for my family. So that's who I am. And let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So before I jump right into interview tips, I want to give just a couple of things to help you prepare for your interview. I'm going to incorporate things that interviewers are looking for. I want to talk to you about telling your story. And then from there, we'll kind of end with interview tips. And if we have time at the end, I'll try to squeeze in some mock interviews if you all have things that you want to practice. So think about interviews that maybe you've had, interviews that maybe you didn't feel as comfortable with, or maybe if you're not used to interviewing and haven't done so, maybe there's things that you're like, man, I wish I knew how to answer this or how to handle myself with. Those are things I want you guys to ask me of. I want you to walk away from this session feeling more confident, feeling more informed, and ready. Okay. All right. And I'm not watching the chat, so y'all can feel free to come off mute, and I'll try to pop in here and there, but let me know if you see some things in the chat that I need to kind of call out there. All right. So preparing for your interview. Now, I'm starting off with a job description for McDonald's. And let me tell you why I'm doing this. McDonald's was one of my first jobs as a teenager when I was, probably some of your ages. And I know that some of you have different aspirations or things that you want to do. So I'm just kind of starting here because if anyone is like me, you probably sometimes get a little overwhelmed with looking at job descriptions, even something like McDonald's, right? So this is kind of the basic type things that they have in here. But once you get through all of this, right, the plans, the 401ks, and everything else that they have, hold on. Then you start getting to what they're looking for, right? All the things. Roll it, lead the experience, have a side smile, help customers order their favorite McDonald's menu items or make menu recommendations, focus on the food. These are things that they're putting in the job descriptions. You can use this to fill in the blank for anything, any job that you want to have. And to be successful, you need to be able to do these different things, right? So this is what you look at. I used to look at job descriptions and then I used to count myself out. And this is more so tech roles, but I would count myself out because there's so many different things that they would ask for that I would always wonder, can I do that? Have I done that? What if I do that and I fail? I don't know how to do that. Will I not get the job because I can't do that? There was always something that held me back from applying to certain roles, or even if I applied, just not coming with my fully confident self. And so one thing I started to do was really breaking down these job descriptions. I started looking at, okay, instead of trying to find what that exact role is or that exact job is, let me start looking at my skills. What are some things that I know I do and I do well? And then how do I show people that? So for example, one thing that I did, there were roles that I didn't do before, right? When I was at Microsoft, there was a new role that I saw that was coming in the industry, customer success manager at the time. And they were there to kind of help strategic companies really kind of help figure out how you adopt things. Microsoft Teams was new at the time. So we were trying to figure out how do you get people to use and adopt new technology in their organizations. And I'd not done that before. So I was nervous about it. And when I looked at the fact that this role was coming, I didn't know how to approach it. So I took some of the job descriptions. I went on LinkedIn. And then in going on LinkedIn, I started looking at that role. I looked it up, customer success manager. What's happening in the industry? I looked at other people's resumes that were in that role. I looked at their background. What types of things did they do? Did someone's background look a little bit like what mine was? I looked at what the requirements for the job were. I just kind of like compared based off of what I was seeing that they were hiring. And from there, I kind of formed my own story. I put 3 different colors inside of what my little cheat sheet was. And one color I kind of put, here are the things that I'm strong at. If dealing with customers, knowing how to navigate conversations, I put, these are some things that I do and I do well. And I've done in other roles. And then I had a second color, and I'm talking when colors, I'm saying highlighting type, words from the job description. And the second color, I put things that I just absolutely did not want to do. And that list was always my smallest list. So if a job required me to do these, few things, I knew that I wouldn't be good at it. You guys talked about excellence. That's part of my excellence is knowing what I'm great at and what, I know that I don't want to do. And so I had that small list. And then my third color that I highlighted in a job description would have been, these are things that I may have had exposure to or things that I think I want to do, but I need a job that's going to help me do it. I mean, how many times do you see a thing that you're like, man, I want to do that, but I don't have the experience to do it. So how do I help them to give me a chance and an opportunity? That was my third color. And so I took that and then I reached out to a hiring manager and I said, listen, I know this is a new role, a new organization. But if you're looking for someone that does ... and those were my first colors, the things that I brought strengths to. I said, if you're looking for someone that does this, that's great with, customers, that knows how to command conversations, that knows how to, think critically, I would love to be considered for your role. And then what I did was I took my third color, which is the things that I want exposure to, the things that I want to learn. And I came back and said, in turn, what I'm looking for in my next experience would be something that dot, dot, dot. And then I had that third color there. I'd love to sit down and have coffee with you or, do a coffee chat with you to talk more. And that was how I used my introduction to get into a role. That manager did call me back and said, yeah, let's talk. And he did say, I don't have the requirements laid out yet, but I like to see what you can bring to the table. Let's have more conversations. I did get the role, and that was one of the things I did at Microsoft as well. So I'm kind of showing you all when you see job descriptions. I'm again using McDonald's as an example, but it can be fill in the blank any job description. I just want you to break that down so that you can start to see yourself in it and then tell your story and articulate that when you're hiring, right? Let someone see you in that role, but you need to see yourself in that role. Does that make sense? Look at the window. Uh-oh. Okay. All right, let me go back. Hold on, I lost my screen. Okay, so these are different things that we did there. So one thing that I looked at, still staying with this, is I said, okay, if we were to looking at today's world and saying, what does McDonald's look for in a good employee? Perhaps that's a prompt that you could look at and, use so that you can kind of start looking through what that is. And so this is just using straight, I think I did ChatGPT or Copilot on this, but McDonald's seeks employees who are reliable, customer focused, team oriented, and adaptable with the commitment to learning and upholding company standards. And so it just kind of goes through what those traits look like, right? If you were to kind of look at fill in a blank type company or role or whatever it is that you're looking for, this is an example of what you can do. And now you can start to pull out, when I talked about those 3 colors that I use, this is where you can start pulling it out. If maybe you're in school and you've led different student groups, or maybe you've done some volunteer time at your church, and maybe you've led a committee at church, or maybe there's other things that you may have done that shows leadership, or that shows how you greet people, or shows that you're not afraid to collaborate with people. This is where you can now start coming in and pulling those things out and saying, hey, I got that. I've done that. And maybe you wanted to kind of do things that helps you to, deal more with other areas. This is where you can come and say, I'd love a job that does that. This helps me. So now I can come back and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about that. I think this will be a great fit for me. And that's how you can kind of open the door to the conversation. So all this first thing is just breaking down the job description. Okay. And then following up on applications. So regardless of, what the job is that you're doing, this might be a time for you to kind of start to think through that brief summary of what your story is. I know that inside of the scholar profiles, there's things that you've done to kind of start telling your story. Pull from there, right? All of these things tells about you. So pull from there. If you're looking at, fast food or whichever type job, if there's a hiring manager, maybe if it's a professional internship, things like that, reach out to that manager. There's different things that you can do if you're doing a direct reach out to let them know that you've applied. There's ways that you can send emails that kind of pulls out that summary and articulates that story. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to find ways to kind of stand out. Keep in mind, a lot of people are going to be applying for a lot of roles, right? And so you want to have a way that you stand out in what you're doing in your application. And so sometimes that means that direct touch. Other times that means reaching out and networking with people. That's going to be really key now. AI is here, and AI is doing a lot of filtering on some of these applications. So some people are having a hard time even getting past the AI screening, right? And so this is where you can, if you're on LinkedIn, you can go to LinkedIn and see if there's people that that know someone that's in some of these roles. And I've had people blindly reach out to me that went to either A&T or University of Maryland Global Campus, or, something that I've done in my life, that reached out and said, hey, I saw that we went to the same school and you're doing this role. I'm interested in getting into, this space, and I'd love to just have a coffee chat if you're up to it, to talk more about how you got started, or, just to kind of ask advice. And I've taken, those calls, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. So don't be afraid to go and do those things as well. So I'm using my daughter as an example, because she is second year, going into her second year in college. She's at George Mason University. And, this year she was trying to apply for something over the summer, and it was just hard getting a summer job. And so she wanted to get work at this restaurant that was near campus because when people leave from the summer, she wanted to have something she could walk to and still be able to work at over the summer during while she's taking classes. And so I'm using this as an example of ways that she kind of followed up. So this restaurant that she's working at now, she said, Mom, I submitted the application and what do I do? Because no one's calling me back from any application that I submit. I'm not getting any callbacks. So I told her, I said, well, call the manager, ask to speak to the manager, and let them know that you're calling to check on the status of your application. And that was my advice. And this playing it safe is because this is what I told her to do. Hi, my name is, Fallon, and I'm a student. And she kind of introduced herself and was excited to be considered for the opportunity. I just wanted to check on the status. That's what I told her to do. And she called instead. She's more of that risk taker. She's more risk taker than I am. So she called and said, hi, may I speak to the manager? My name is, Fallon. I just applied online for your open position. And I was calling to see when I can come in for an interview. Well, the manager didn't know that, she had just, I don't know what the manager knew, but the manager was like, oh, just go ahead and come on in at such and such date. And so she got the job. And I think that manager thought that the other manager told her to come in. I'm not sure what happened, but she's been working ever since. And so part of my takeaways from that was be confident, speak clearly, leave them wanting to know more about you. Sometimes they're going to say, we'll review and call you back. And, that's perfectly fine too. But if you are that risk taker, don't be afraid to call back, talk to another manager, follow up, different things like that. So that way you can make sure that you're standing out in terms of your application. Let them know. Right. And she literally called right after she submitted the application. So you don't have to wait for it. All right. So this little exercise here that I want to do for you all. And some of you can kind of think about this from your scholar profiles if there's things that you can use from there. Simple formula. When an interviewer is asking, tell me about yourself, this is the three things in that formula: who you are, what you enjoy, and what you're working towards. And so as an example, I have here, I'm a high school student who enjoys technology and helping others. One of my strengths is communication, and I'm interested in exploring careers in cybersecurity, information technology, fill in the blank type thing. I just want you guys to take a moment and think through this, and I would love to hear some of your tell me abouts that you may have. So either come off mute or put it in the window, but tell me a little bit about your experience or things that you would say for your tell me about yourself. If someone asked you in that interview, what are some things that you all would say there? And I can't see the screen. Let me see. Oh, hands. Yes. James Coleman, go ahead.
I'm a third year college student. I enjoy messing around with code and training my service dog, and I'm interested in exploring going into a career in the government within technology to protect other people and their technology.
Nice. I will tell you as an interviewer, I'm going to hold back on all of your things because I like to dive right in and ask more questions, but that's exactly what you want to do. River, I see you next. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm River. I'm a senior in high school. I enjoy music and dancing and singing and really anything performative. I'm a strong communicator and I'm a hard worker, and I'm working towards my goal of becoming a professional dancer.
Nice. Exactly. See how simple this is in the tell me about yourself? A lot of times we get into the rumbling of like saying all the things and trying to lay everything out. Keep it simple at first because they're going to come back and ask the questions that they want. Primus, is that right or Primus? I'm sorry.
No, you got it right the second time. It's Primus.
Okay, Primus. Sorry. Tell me, Primus. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right, I'm Primus. I'm a first year college student. I enjoy playing jazz and reading books on philosophy, and I'm working towards becoming a corporate lawyer so I can protect Black families and keeping their estates and assets in the families and not losing.
Love it. Love it. Very clear, very concise. You all, this is fantastic. Keep it going. I love that. Hannah, I see you next. Tell me about yourself.
Hello, my name is Hannah Page. I'm a third year senior biology major, chemistry minor in the pre-med track at Howard University, and I enjoy research, helping others, dance, and learning more about medicine. And I'm working towards becoming a physician scientist and making a difference in the healthcare community.
Awesome, awesome. Look at how that just kind of lines up, right? They're going to have so many more questions. Tell me how you got started with that, and how did you know you wanted to do that? And so many questions and things and conversations come from that. Love it. Anaya, tell me about yourself. Oh, you were unmuted and then you muted yourself again. You're still on mute, love. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Hi, I'm Anaya. I'm an upcoming high school senior. I enjoy playing sports and helping people on the sports team. One of my strengths is communication, and I'm interested in becoming a sports agent and representing collegiate athletes.
Love that. I had a friend who did something similar. She did more sports therapy starting out, and then she went off and did a whole bunch of other things to sports arena. Love that. It goes to show what that goal is and what your aspirations are. Thank you for sharing that. Jonathan, I see your hand next.
My name is Jonathan Edwards. I would say that I enjoy music and all forms of art, really. I'm a strong believer of a sound body is a sound mind, and I would say that I'm working towards being proficient in tons of skills and just expanding my knowledge as a whole.
Love that. Love that. And be prepared, you all. As you do these things, you want them to come back. You want them to ask more questions because that's how they're showing, oh, they're curious about you. They're curious about, what it is that got you there. So wonderful. Ivy, I see your hand up next. Tell me about yourself.
Hi, so my name is Ivy. I'm an upcoming high school senior, and I enjoy dancing. I'm my school's dance team captain. I also love showing my school spirit around school. One of my strengths is I'm a very reliable person, very honest, and I'm interested in becoming a nurse practitioner at James Madison University.
Love it. Thank you, Ivy, for sharing that. Love that. Love that. Love it. You're next. Tell me about yourself.
Hello, my name is Lovett, and I am a high school senior, and I enjoy playing video games, what's called tinkering with anything tech related, and Legos. And I am interested in getting into the computer engineering field.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh, you guys, y'all killing me because I just want to keep going and we have so much to cover. All right. Thank you, love it. Dave, tell me about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Morgan. I'm a mechanical engineering and history student studying at Oldham University, and I'll be an upcoming senior this year. I'm interested in both history, aerospace, and transportation technology. Some of my hobbies is that I like to cook, and what I hope to use my experience in is to get a career in the aerospace history field, working for a museum to help educate youth and inspire them to be the next generation of entrepreneurs and change makers.
Wow. Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dave. That's great. Aubrey, I see your hand up next. Tell me about yourself.
Dude, my name is Aubrey Smith, and I'm studying business information technology at Virginia Tech. Some things I do in my downtime are playing soccer, listening to music, and watching movies. And I'm pursuing a career in information technology in the defense industry. So,
Wow. Nice, nice, nice. Love that. Love that. Thank you for sharing that, Aubrey. Chancellor, I see your hand up next. Tell me about yourself.
Hello, my name is Chancellor. I'm a rising sophomore environmental science major, chemistry and computer science double minor at Howard University. I enjoy listening to music and building Legos and spending time with my friends. I'm a strong hard worker, and I'm interested in doing research on affordable, sustainable energy sources and advocating for my community.
Nice. Very good. Thank you so much, Chancellor, for sharing that. And then Lilani, we're end with you. Tell me about yourself.
Hi, my name is Leilani Thompson. I am an upcoming college freshman at Hampton University. I enjoy singing and cooking and drawing. I really like art. I'm a very artistic person, and I'm working towards getting a master's degree. And yeah.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Lilani. So while you all may think that you just shared a couple of tidbits, you shared so many nuggets because things that I got from that was the fact that you have goals, the fact that you're aspirational. Some of you love community, some of you love music. When I think about Legos, I think about how your mind works and building and, constructing different things. analytics. I've heard some of that. Like there's other things that while you think that you're kind of you're saying certain things, these are the things that good interviewers are picking out. Oh, you led that. Oh, you're on the dance team. That means you're not afraid to perform. These are different things that people are picking out about you. So that's why you want to be succinct and practice it. Practice it before you have to say it. So very good. Thank you all for that. For that and participation there. All right, so I am going to dive into tips. Again, I want you to think about interviews. If you have done them, that maybe there's some things that you're like, I wasn't really sure how to answer that, or I didn't feel good about that, or here's the part of interviews that makes me nervous. Whatever that is, these are things that, let's talk about it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I know this is kind of a busy slide, but what I don't want you all to do is let lack of preparation or different things get in the way of you making a lasting impression. Technology issues happen. So you have to recover from that. Like sometimes things just are what they are. And I've had times where I've had to just reschedule an interview. No fault of anyone's own, but you know what? Go ahead and we can get another time because I want to make sure that you give your best interview. And that doesn't count people out in my book. But set yourself up for success, right? Make sure that if you have an online profile photo, it's appropriate, right? So make sure it's high res, well lit photo. Make sure you're dressed professionally. You don't want to have, too much out and showing for a professional photo. Use a solid color, light background, just things where you can see your face. You can see who you are. Don't leave your profile photo blank. Don't use an icon or whatever. I know some people are kind of putting the AI type things in, but it still represents them, and that's okay. And don't use a selfie or a group shot. People can't really tell which one is you, so don't do those things. From your tech, making sure that before you go on that interview, before you dial in, make sure that you've done, check your bandwidth, restart your computer, make sure you have all your updates in, your connections are all good, whatever the case is. That says use a wired connection. That's old school. Clearly, I pulled this from somewhere, but whatever the case is, make sure that your connection is solid. And then as you're thinking about preparing for that call, make sure that, you have a good venue without a whole bunch of noise, that your lighting is good. If you have your light cameras or whatever, make sure that it's positioned where you can, have the right lighting on your face. Do your test call, check your equipment, make sure that, if you have a copy of a resume that you need to kind of be able to look at and you want to have some notes or things like that, have that stuff printed and ready, or things that you can kind of have a second screen on. But just make sure you have those things. And then also think about your nonverbal skills. Your body language says a lot. If you're slunched down and kind of away from the screen and doing this, like come up so that they can see you. Even if you are wearing shorts underneath or whatever the case is, make sure that you're dressing the part and whatever is on camera is appropriate. Speak clearly, have a positive tone. Make sure you're looking at the camera. I have had different interviews where people read notes and sometimes they may say, because nerves gets you too. Like it's not fun interviewing because you're sitting there feeling like you're getting judged. It's not fun. So I've had some people that says, I have notes. Is it okay if I read from my notes? And I will tell you, I was an Amazon bar raiser, which at the time, only 1%, not at the time, but 1% of Amazon employees are bar raisers. And we're very highly trained for Amazon interviews, not just for Amazon, but Amazon Web Services across the company, 1%, that they have very stringent interview processes. And so these are things where I have to go as a bar raiser. I'm like a facilitator. So when people go through their interviews, I want to make sure that when we're hiring people, regardless of whether I work with them or not, because I would do on loops for other parts of the business, I like to make sure that we're putting bias out just because someone didn't speak a certain way, but could they do the job? Could they learn the job? Maybe they were looking at their notes, but does that mean that they didn't do the things, or does that mean they're just reading, things like that. So don't just read your notes. You can use it as your guide. This talks about just kind of, you don't talking too loudly or softly into the microphone, articulate, make sure that they can hear you. I talked about slouching, leaning back, frowning, don't do those things. And then the last thing is end on a positive note, because sometimes we don't know how to end. And an interviewer may say, do you have questions for me? Have a question ready. Have something ready, right? You want to stand out. So at the end of that interview, that's a chance to leave that lasting impression. So state your interest in that position. I'm really looking forward to an opportunity to do deeper research to do more research with this. And tell them something that you've learned on there. So when you do your research, it's not just I want to work for this company. It's I'm excited about the grounds that you all have broken, seeing your names in these reports and the progress that you've made. And I'd love to be a part of that. When I interviewed for Microsoft, when I was an interviewer for Microsoft, I can't tell you how many people sat across the table or on the phone with me. And when I would ask them why they were interested in a position, they would say, because it's Microsoft, because it's Amazon. I love Amazon. I mean, who doesn't want to work for Amazon? Who doesn't want to work for Microsoft? Wasn't impressive as an interviewer because it didn't show me that you knew anything about the company besides the name. And what we want is when you come in, we want to know that you can hit that ground running and be an asset to that organization. So make sure that you do your research and do that. I would ask people when I was an Amazon interviewer, tell me about a product or something that Amazon does that's impressive to you, right? And some people would say, oh, it's just Amazon. But when I interviewed for Amazon, what I did was I looked at companies that I used or companies that I worked with. Netflix, for example, as an Amazon customer. I looked at Netflix and said, how does Netflix use Amazon? What are they using the Amazon for? And when you go into Netflix and you choose, the video selections and things, there's storage that's underneath there. That storage is being sent somewhere, right? That storage is being kept somewhere. There's different things where you are looking at companies that you use and how are they using fill in a blank company that you're interviewing for. Or go look at who their bigger customers are and see how they're using it. That's something that you can bring into an interview that shows you know something about what the company does, right? Not just that it's the company's name. Ask if there's anything else you can provide. This says references and work samples. I would change that a little bit just to say, I would, when I coach people on their interviews, I would say when you're ending, ask them, was there anything that you still have questions on that I can answer for you? And I tell people that because it's gotten me. I've had a couple of people ask me that on interviews where I had some things in my mind where I was like, yeah, they were good, but I'm not really sure about, but I let it go. And when they came back and said, is there anything that I can answer for you or anything that you have questions on? That gave me a chance to say, you know what I do? You mentioned this and I'm not really sure what that was. How did you know to do da, da, da? And then we talked about it, and then that cleared the doubt out of my mind, and I was able to move forward and represent with them. So ask them, is there anything else I can answer for you? Ask about next steps in the process, when to follow up or who you'll hear from next, tell me what's next, what's the next step, and, what can I expect as a next step? They can tell you. Typically, it's going to be the recruiters are going to call you and, follow up with you, whatever the case is, but don't be afraid to make sure that you understand what those next steps are. Thank the interviewer for their time, and then you can send a personal, thank you email or letter. I would get personal notes on LinkedIn and sometimes in my email. So all of those are different things that, kind of helps you with being able to stand out. Real quick, so when we talk about interviewers, they're not looking for perfect answers. Things that interviewers typically are looking for is to see your character. Who are you? If you're someone that they have to pull information from, then they're going to wonder how you're going to do in that team collaboration environment. Can you talk in a team meeting? So show that you have character. Show that you're curious. It doesn't matter that you have all the answers, but ask those good questions. Are you curious about, what are those things that's going to lead you to go deeper, right? That you have good communication. They're looking for that. They're looking for your confidence. And sometimes confidence is not just because you speak loudly, right? Or you're more vocal, because we're not all like that. So even if you tend to be a little softer spoken, do you know what you're talking about? Right? Because you can see areas where we kind of jazz up and things that gets us interested. Are you coachable? If you have someone that comes in and is like, I know everything, then you're not going to be open to really learning the things that you need to learn in that job. So can I teach you that? Maybe you don't know that, but you know this and we can build on that. So are you coachable? And are you willing to learn? Some people come in, and I lied to you not. When I was at Microsoft, I had a person who was out of college for 1 year, first job. And I asked him, okay, tell me about your goals. What is it that you want to do? And he said, well, I want to be the CEO of Microsoft. in the next 5 years. And I said, okay, you've been out of school for a year. Let's talk about what else we can do. He was like, no, I don't want to do anything else. That's all. I want to be the CEO of Microsoft. And this is as Satya was coming on board. And he wasn't willing to learn anything. He didn't want to learn anything. He felt he was ready to be the CEO. And needless to say, his career was short-lived there, but are you willing to learn, And the last thing I'll just say is that your stories matter more than your experience. There's a lot of things you guys are still learning and figuring out. So learn how to tell that story, right? Learn how to stand out. Learn how to let those people be interested in saying, hey, we want to know more, or that's someone we want to invest in. Show that you do your homework and that you can bring that to the team. So these are things that kind of stands out when interviewers are going through their jobs. And so this last part, I'm going to go just through a few questions here. When you think about, and this is not an extensive list, these are 6 questions, but when you think about, what you're encountering your first job and your internship and scholarship, college interviews, about 70% of what you're asked can focus around some of these questions. Again, this is not a full list. This is just a sample, but different things I'm going to go through for this next section. What are your strengths? People are going to want to know things about you. Tell me about a challenge you overcame. This shows how you solve problems, right? How do you think when something is happening that's unanticipated? What are some things that you do to address and solve problems? And what was the result of it? Why are you interested in this opportunity? Now, this is where you start talking about goals and career exploration, things that, you might want to go and start to look into when it talks about that interest. Describe a time you went above and beyond. This is something that teaches them and shows them, talks to them about your work ethics, who you are, how you deliver. How do you handle unanticipated and stressful situations? Again, problem solving, and what's a weakness that you're working on? So this is about you. So I'm going to give sample answers for some of these questions. Can y'all see this okay? I know it's small. It's a little bit. Can you see it all right? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So first question, what are your strengths? This is, again, a question that's about you. So what this interview is really looking for is to understand what skills you bring to a team, okay? And so a sample answer for that could be, one of my strengths is reliability. I take my responsibilities seriously and consistently complete assignments and commitments on time. And for example, and then give them an example. I was responsible for XYZ and I led my team to do this. And we had these deadlines given by the leader, right? Like that's where you can now go into an example of what that looks like. Maybe they're asking, tell me about a challenge that you overcame. When an interviewer is asking that, things that they're looking to understand is to know that you can handle things that doesn't go as expected, but you can still recover. And sometimes your recovery is not pretty, right? Like sometimes it's, I did this, I did that. It did not turn out okay, but here's the lesson that came from that. And that's okay too. So a simple answer that you could have for that: I struggled in a difficult class and wasn't earning the grades I wanted. I sought help from my instructor, created a study schedule, improved my performance. And I add on to there, right? I studied for X hours more each week, and my grade went from a D to a B by the end of the first quarter. My instructor asked me to help another student who also used my tips, and their grades turned around. This is where you start putting more data. Amazon, I will tell you, I'm going to speak Amazon only because out of all the companies that I've done interviews for, Amazon is probably the hardest company that I've experienced to interview for, because Amazon is very data driven. When I've had people come into interviews and say things like, I helped a lot of people, that's not telling anyone anything. And as an Amazon interviewer, we would say, define a lot. When you say you helped a lot of people, quantify that. Tell me, and you're not going to know exactly, like I helped 10 people, but you can say on the team that I had, there were 7 of us. And out of 7 people, I was constantly a partner paired with 2 people. And you want to be able to quantify and show that, right? So have some of that data. And if you can't, it's okay. Don't make it up. But you can easily say, I'm not really sure like, how many people use my solution. But my manager did bring it up and say that this was something that was helpful. These are different things that you can do, or you can say my teacher, my instructor, when I helped the other students. Another thing that I would hear when we talk is people, would say, everyone loved my solution. And so as an Amazon interviewer, I would say, well, how do you know that they liked it? And some people would say, because they said they did. That's not quite strong enough, but now you learning that can go and make sure that you're answering it. Did you take surveys? Did, scores go up higher? Did more people start coming to you and asking you for different things? Like, these are different ways that you can start to get data that people really did like it. Maybe they now are rolling this out from your idea. Why are you interested in this opportunity? So what an interview really wants to know is they want to understand your goals. And a sample answer there could be, I'm interested because it will allow me to learn new skills, gain experience, and explore a field I'm considering for my future. Some of the things that you all gave in your intro when you did the tell me about yourself, this would be a great place. Some of those things are exactly the types of things you want to put into here. That fits very well there. And then the last 3 questions here, describe a time you went above and beyond. So now we're talking your work ethic. So what the interview wants is to better understand your character. They want to understand who you are. How do you deliver? How do you do these things? So a sample answer could be, after completing my assigned responsibilities for a school event, I stayed to help clean up and support other volunteers. Work ethic is, I didn't do just what I was asked to do, which was the assignment. I went above and beyond, and I stayed and I did these different things. This is kind of a simplified answer, but it's all relevant in showing that you go above and beyond, right? I care. How do you handle unanticipated stressful situations? Again, this is like a problem-solving type question. And so what an interviewer really wants to know is that you can handle things when they don't go as expected and that you can recover. So a sample answer could be, I focus on prioritizing tasks, breaking large projects into smaller steps, and asking for help when needed. For example, and then give an example of when that may have happened. And then the last question, what is a weakness that you're working on about you? Now, some people hear weakness and, we are honest. We want to just kind of tell everything. Well, I procrastinate, or it just takes me a long time to do, X, Y, Z. I just, that's the kind of thing that our minds might go to, but that's not necessarily, the type of thing that they're looking for. A sample answer when you're talking about your weakness is still make it sound positive, right? I used to be nervous speaking in front of groups. To improve, I volunteered to present in and out of class more often. The more I speak, the more my confidence has grown. So what you're showing is, I'm a nervous speaker. I don't like public speaking, but here's some things I've done to try to get better about that. And I've tried to challenge myself to do these things. And what I'm seeing is the more I'm doing it, the more I feel better about it. It doesn't mean you still love it, but it's showing that you have growth that you're trying to do with that. All right. Does that make sense? All of this? Is that helpful to you all? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So I think I only have just a few more minutes. And what I wanted to do was try to see if we, if anyone is interested, I'm going to do it on the fly here, but I'll pull some of the questions up and then see if you all want to practice any type of mock interviews or if you have any questions for me. Dave, I see your hand up and I'll come back down to here.
My question is, have you used the star or car method?
Yes. Yes.
And if so, was it in a loose sense, or have you somehow kind of like adapted your responses?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. So again, I'm going to go to Amazon because that's my most recent, that was the hardest thing. Amazon trains and coaches people to use the STAR method. And for those that don't know the STAR method, STAR methodology, situation, tasks, what's the A? Help me out, Dave.
It's action, result, and then
results.
car is challenge, action, result.
So
NASA usually typically uses that one.
Yeah, so I've used star, but let me tell you what I do with the stars. I add an extra R on star, and
Mm.
that star is the results of the results. So for those that are not as familiar, when you're telling your story, this helps you to tell your story in a crisp, clean, and concise way with the right level of details. And you want to do that because you want to give it to them and let them come back and ask the other questions or details that you may have. So when I do star, I do STARR, the results of the results. So I may say, if they're asking a question, let me grab one of these questions. For example, I'll do the last one. What's the weakness that you're working on? And I'll use this example here, right? So a weakness I'm working on is I used to be nervous. And this is true. I used to be so nervous to speak in front of groups, but I knew that I had things that I wanted to say or that was important to me. So the situation was I was asked to be a panelist on this, and I'm going to make stuff up, but I was asked to be a panelist on this women's retreat, and I was nervous about, speaking. And so the task was, and you don't have to say ST, I'm just saying it for those that may not be as familiar. So the task was to come up with a topic that I thought the women could, relate to, that I could speak on. And so what I did as my action is I researched, I set up coffee chats with multiple women that were experts in that area, experts in that field. I started, using AI with some of my ideas to kind of polish things out. The result was I did like a focus group. I pulled a handful of people together, tried it in front of them and got their feedback. And then the result of the result was they gave me good tips that I could do to kind of, go and talk to these women about. But now they liked it so much that they wanted me to do a TED talk on it. And soon that's the result of the results. So not only did I deliver it, but they want to do a TED talk. And so now I'm scheduled to do this TED talk on this thing. And so on top of me not wanting to speak in front of people, now I'm speaking on this platform. That's very high level, but do you see what I'm saying when you're talking results of the results? It's not just I did this thing, but now does someone use that? Does something else get bigger from that? And so star model is so important. It sounds like the card is also that helps you kind of more concisely tell your story. And then they'll come back and ask more details. Okay. Any other questions?
I have another one.
Sure.
I wanted to also ask about like what is your experience having group interviews?
Mm,
Because I know I've done a few before, like for part-time jobs. And so
yeah.
like sometimes you can get a little bit nervous because you're near other people. And
Yeah.
then at the same time, when I've done group interviews, they had us do an activity to kind of
Yeah.
look at how we approach a problem.
Right. Yeah. Loops are so fun, aren't they? So at Amazon, you will loop with 5 to 6 different people. And Amazon has what they call their leadership principles. And I don't mean to keep making this Amazon centric, but hopefully you guys can see the transferability in terms of other areas as well. But Amazon, they have leadership principles. These are the guiding principles or mission or values, things that they have. And each interviewer would be assigned us an area to talk to you about. And so it's not that they're all interviewing you on the same thing. They have different people that have different things that they're trying to pull from you. So when you're doing that loop interview, you don't know what questions they're going to ask or kind of what they've been assigned to do. What I recommend for people when they're preparing for loops is write all your stories out. Just write it all out. Start looking at things, and when you write all these stories out of things that you've done, things that you've learned, things that you've, driven, results that you got, all these things, now you can start to go and say, which ones show my leadership skills? If this job requires leadership, now you can start to highlight and pull out different things in there that shows your leadership. If this job requires analytical type thinking, now you can go and say, oh, you know what? I analyzed this, or I wasn't sure about this, but I had to go and talk to someone about that. And now here's how now you can start to pull that out and you can have that in terms of that category. So look at what the job description is asking for and what they're looking for. And now pull those stories and practice it. Practice saying that stuff out loud. No one knows your stories like you do. And so now as you're going to loop, think about what they're asking you. I've had some people that when I ask a question, they're automatically like, da-da-da-da. I'm like, and I have to tell them, slow down, take a breath. This is a behavioral type, interview, because what I'm trying to see is how you think. I'm trying to see how you do these different things, right? Like, how do you solve problems? And so I want you to think through your best answer. And if that means taking a breath, Take that breath. I used to be a rambler. That's kind of what my thing was. And I had to stop because if I'm talking so fast, how are they getting anything that I want to articulate? And so I had to start asking myself, what do I want them to know about me when I finish answering this question? And then that helped me to get closer to what it is I'm trying to articulate. And then also times I had to stop and ask, what are they asking me? You hear the question, so I'm stopping. Are you asking this or is it that? Don't be afraid to kind of get clarification if you're unsure of what it is they're asking. But that's how with loops are. We take breaks in between loops. And so and I say we have transitioned, but Amazon takes breaks in between loops. So they may say, hey, I know you just finished this interview. Do you need to get a water, use the restroom, whatever the case is. Take a moment if you need it. But when you're doing with loops, think about sometimes you have to look at even the style of the interviewer, right? Because not all interviewers are the same. But your stories, write your stuff out, look at what they're looking for. If you know someone on the team or can be introduced or see someone on LinkedIn that might be a part of that organization or, in that type role, don't be afraid to say, hey, can I have a coffee chat? And ask some questions. What are some things that you do in your day to day? What are some things that you're, like ask or go on LinkedIn and other places and look at what they may be doing, posting about. Okay. Chancellor, I see your hand up.
Yes, I was wondering if you had any advice when it comes to cover letters. I've seen them being asked for on applications more frequently.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a high level answer, but I'm gonna Cassandra has some great suggestions of saying come to her for like resumes and things like that in yesterday's session. So she may have even better tips on some of that. But I would say on a cover letter, and Cassandra, I will go to you in case I miss anything and you have something you want to add there. But I would say for cover letters, oftentimes when I think about what stood out to me when I read cover letters is that I could see who that person was, right? Do you know about my company? Do you know about the role? Why are you excited about the role? What value do you bring? So the example that I kind of gave earlier in the session, when I said there was a job I wanted, but the job didn't exist at Microsoft at the time, and I was, trying to position myself to have it. That's where I, would say, hey, I'm excited about this opportunity, looking forward to meeting you. Here's some skills that I bring to the, table. I noticed that your company is um, a top competitor for helping people to do XYZ. In my role as this, I've helped do these types of things and would love to talk with you more. Thank you. Looking forward to having a talk with you or interview with you to talk more about how I may be a good asset to your team. I'll keep that high level, but Cass, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there anything that you would recommend for cover letters that I may have missed?
Absolutely. I would say it goes back to what Dr. Murray said yesterday, Dr. Christie yesterday, about when you're writing an essay and how you want to be unique and you want to stand out. You want to do the same thing in your cover letter. You can Google. I know you young people use your phones for a lot of things, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, but you can Google sample cover letter based on the industry that you're trying to get into. It'll give you some ideas, but you definitely want to put something in the letter because it's going to be the cover and it's going to introduce you before they actually see your resume. So you want to make sure that the resume looks good and it really presents a good presentation of who you are, what you've done, and what you're looking for. But you also want to make sure that your cover letter sells you well as well.
Yes. Thank you for that. All right. Any other questions? I think I'm coming up at time. So any other questions that you all have that I can help with?
Do you have any notes for people for technical interviews?
I do. If you want to just do a chat with me, I'll share my information and then we can definitely talk more offline. I have a lot
Oh, okay. Thank
notes.
you.
I have a lot of notes for technical interviews. Yeah, just reach out. All right, Dr. Christie, I think that puts me at time, does it?
Yes, hopefully I'm not
Okay.
breaking up, but
No, you're good.
it's been outstanding. Applause to Miss Quanteer for a phenomenal
Yeah.
session.
Oh, thank you all. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. I'm happy to connect with any of you if you're interested in talking more. Thank you for your time.